You're listening to the Sales Today podcast, and I'm your host, Fred Copestake. On this podcast, we explore how sales professionals can develop a modern approach to winning business, the application of virtual selling techniques, how to create meaningful business relationships, and much more. Why not take our free collaborative selling scorecard to see how your sales approach suits today's environment? You'll find a link in the show notes. And welcome to this episode of the Sales Today podcast, part of the Ethical Selling series, where I'm delighted to be joined by Nia Woodhouse. Nia is a senior SDR at My Sales Coach. So Nia, welcome.
Thank you so much, Fred. I am thrilled to be here.
Good. So, a couple of things before we get into the ethical selling piece. Could you just explain, well, a couple of things. Firstly, SDR and what that role is. I know some people listening will go, come on, Fred, we all know that. Lots won't, actually. And then talk to me about My Sales Coach. So first up, SDR, what is it?
Sure. So you're right in saying that there are a lot of people who don't know what an SDR is. So it stands for Sales Development Rep, and there's many embellishments on that name. But mainly it'll be a SDR or a BDR, a Business Development Rep. And it's our job to fill the top of the funnel for the sales team. So we will be reaching out to new business prospects through multi-channel. It might be cold calls, LinkedIn, emails, physical mail, but our job is to pique the interest of a prospect and book a meeting, a sales qualified meeting with an account executive or a full sales cycle salesperson. So that is our job, day in, day out, generating new pipeline.
Yeah, go on, carry on, sorry.
No, go on. So that's ultimately, in a nutshell, what an SDR is.
Yeah, it's a tough job. It is a tough job, isn't it? Tough gig.
It is, and it can be overlooked in businesses because it's not directly revenue generating, but ultimately, if you're not filling the pipeline, then you've not got pipeline to close. So in some companies and companies that I've definitely worked for, it's a very valued job, and it's no longer looked at as sort of an entry-level role. Like, some people want to be an SDR for life. They want to just really hone in on their craft and be great at booking new business meetings. And I think that's an absolute win for businesses when you've got people who actually enjoy it.
Yeah, as I say, in many industries, many sectors just don't use this function. And I'm sure there's people listening going, oh, I want an SDR. Where can I get one? Because, yeah, no, it is a specialist job. And when you start talking about, trying to book meetings with people in C-suite, something like that, and that is pretty specialist stuff.
Exactly. And it can be time consuming as well. So if you've got an account exec team, business development managers who are closing deals, they have a million and one things that they'll be doing, as well as probably prospecting themselves. So they won't be generating nearly as many leads than an SDR team can do when it's their sole role and responsibility to do.
And they can look at all the things to get better at doing just that thing. So
exactly.
Which kind of leads us on to My Sales Coach. So yeah, could you just talk a little bit about who you're doing that for now and what My Sales Coach is all about?
Yeah, sure. So for my whole career, I've worked at helping salespeople to be more successful, be it tech or in sales coaching. And My Sales Coach was born because everybody knows, sales leaders, C-suite execs knows that sales coaching is the best way to support their team to be more successful, to continue with their development, to prove to them that they're invested in them and they care about their career. Yet the biggest challenge that we see is that sales leaders just don't have the time to coach their team consistently. And that is not a dig at them, because we know how busy sales leaders are. They have reports, they have forecasting, they have board meetings, they get pulled into interviews, they have to review applications, they get pulled into deals. So we know how busy they are, and their time is precious, but ultimately they just don't have that time to dedicate to coaching consistently. So that is where we come in with our bank of expert sales coaches. And we know that one coach may be amazing for one person, they might not be right for another, because salespeople are different. We want different things. Some people might want a coach who keeps them accountable, who doesn't fluff things. They're just straight to the point. But some people want an arm around them to say everything's going to be okay, and this is how we're going to get there. So we make sure that we match that person to their right sales coach. It may not be that the sales leader coaches in the way that they would want them to. So that is how we came about.
Yeah, no, it's a very interesting model. And we'll put some links. We'll put some links to that at the end of the episode. So, on to the matter in hand, though. So I wanted to talk to you about ethical selling or ethics in selling, because I spotted a LinkedIn post where you were talking about this, just as my own research was starting to take place. I thought, oh, hello, let's have a conversation about this. So yeah, when we talk about ethics in selling, what is it? How do you perceive that? What does it mean to you?
Yeah, so just to preface this, I still think that it's crazy in 2023 that this is something that we have to shine a light on, because salespeople and the sales profession has developed so much in the past decade or so. So the fact that we still have to have this conversation is crazy, but definitely one that still needs to be had. And like you said, ethical selling is different for different people. So I'll talk about it from my perspective. When we talk about ethics in sales, it's about being transparent with your prospects, making sure that you're bringing them along with the conversation and they know where they're at. Gone are the days of stereotypical gift of the gab sort of sales where we'll do anything to push them over the line. And it's more about selling to people who actually want to buy your stuff. It may well be educating them to your space, but ultimately you only want them to buy from you if they want to buy. You don't want to force them. You don't want to pull wool over their eyes as it used to be. So ethical selling to me is making sure that we overcome those stereotypes and, like I said, sell to people who want to buy.
Yeah, sell people who want to buy. I mean, that's such wow, amazing concept if you think about it. But it is sad that we've kind of ended up in this position. The 1980s have got a lot to answer for that. Okay, so we'll come into how we start to do that in a minute, but let's just have a moment on why is that important then?
So I would say it's just sensible selling. And the reason that I say that is because as a company and as a sales rep, you want a good reputation. You want your prospects and your customers to trust you, because if your prospects don't trust you, they're not going to buy from you. They're going to go to a competitor. If your customers don't trust you, then they're going to leave and they're going to churn. And for me personally, I want a clear conscience. I want to be good at my job, knowing that I've sold to people well, sold to people who will benefit from our services, that we're helping them to overcome a problem, but we're not selling to people just because it makes our numbers look better.
Yeah, I like that. You might well see sensible selling used in different formats from me later, but it just is, isn't it? It's like, why would you not want to do this? Develop your reputation. See, I'm old-fashioned. I use that word rather than personal brand, but it's kind of the same thing, isn't it?
Okay, yeah.
Well, develop your reputation and keep your customers happy so they keep buying from you. I mean, like, why not do that? But of course, yeah, having the clear conscience, which means I think you can then think better. You could just do the job better because you're not being weighed down with stuff, are you?
Totally.
Okay, then. So talk to me then about how you kind of practically apply some of this stuff. What do you actually do day to day, SDR, tough role, yeah? um, interrupting people, we could say, to a degree. How do you go about making sure what you do kind of ticks those boxes to be sensible, to be ethical, and keep you with a clear conscience?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I would start right from the beginning and making sure that the people that I reach out to, they're in my ideal customer profile. And by that, I mean, we work with people in similar spaces, in similar roles, with similar teams who tell me day in, day out that they are facing the same challenges when it comes to providing their team with sales coaching. So making sure that I'm reaching out to those people and I have a reason to be speaking with them is the first way that I can be ethical. I'm not just calling people, anyone, at 7 o'clock at tea time because I want to try and get them to buy something. These are targeted outreaches. So it really starts there. Then we've got the actual outreach, and I'll normally use a phone first approach. So it'll be a cold call, and the first thing I tell them is that it's a cold call. Do you want to hang up? And 99% of the time I'm selling to salespeople, they get their team to make cold calls. They're not going to hang up, but now they know. And I've got over the anxiety of them picking up a call from somebody that they don't know who it is. There's going to be that natural anxiety, and they've now made that decision to stay on the conversation. Then I'll go back to my first point, whereby I'm telling them the exact reason that I'm reaching out and why I wanted to speak to them, because we're working with similar people in similar spaces and they face these challenges. Do they resonate? And from there on out, whether they do and they agree to take a meeting to learn a little bit about how we're helping other sales leaders to overcome that, they know the next steps throughout the sales process. And if they don't, we part as friends. We might agree next steps, whether it's a time thing, we connect on LinkedIn so that they're aware of us. So there's no shoehorning meetings in, because that doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help me because they might not turn up. It doesn't help them because they're anxious that they're now in a sales cycle that they didn't want to be in. And it doesn't help the account exec team because they've got hostage prospects who don't want to be there. So it's bringing them along, telling them what the next steps are. And I know it's my job to pique interest. So I do that as crystally clear as possible.
So a couple of things which are really kind of standing out to me there is that transparency element. You know, you said that before. It's just being dead clear. This is what it's all about. This is how it's going to work. This is what's going to happen next, which puts prospects at ease. And is that also what puts you at ease? Because you think, well, I'm not lying to people here. You can come back to me, and I've not said anything that isn't true. You can never throw it back at me. Does that help both ways then?
100%. I think that gives me so much job satisfaction as well. When I pick up the phone and I have a conversation with somebody and they're like, oh, do you know what? I actually, that rings true so well in my world. Like, I know how valuable sales coaching is, but I just don't have the time and I feel guilty about it. And I'm like, well, let's share a few ideas about how we're helping to overcome it. And I come off that call knowing that I've booked it, thinking we could actually really help this person. So it gives you job satisfaction. If you're shoehorning meetings in, if you're really trying to close deals where you don't know if they're totally bought in, then how can you walk away thinking, oh, I've done a great job there? Because anyone can do that. And that's not a skill. That's just being pushy.
Yeah. Well, you're helping this person, so the sales leader, but actually you're helping a whole bunch of other people, aren't you? You're helping people, well, literally in the same position as you, most likely. So yeah, you can really go away. This is doing good stuff. Yeah, we've got a reason for doing this.
Exactly. And I think I drink our champagne. I have my own sales coach, and I know how that's helped me personally and professionally. I am a female in sales in a male dominated space, and I have a female sales coach, which is pretty much unheard of. And that's helped me exponentially. So that's me personally, but also you're so right. We help hundreds of people in my position, and seeing those feedback scores come in where they're like 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, they really help me to work on my mindset, on my imposter syndrome, all these things that we know are bubbling under the surface, but they're a bit of a taboo to talk about because salespeople are stereotypically confident, outgoing, gift of the gab, nothing's going to bruise them, that sort of thing. But we know that that's just not the case in 2023.
Yeah. So it was interesting, the other word you said about piquing people's interest. And so it seems to me that you're doing that by understanding their problems so clearly. You just know that's going to be interesting for them because you're like a mind reader, as opposed to let's sit here and come up with a bunch of like cool tactics and sort of cheeky little ways that we can weasel our way in, which is also got salespeople a bad name. That's how you're getting interest, by authentically understanding people, what they're all about.
Exactly. And that helps so much with the common objections that we face on cold calls. It's typically been overcoming objections, but we try to look at it more as understanding objections. And like I said, the role of the SDR is not to close a deal, it's to pique interest. Does this prospect face a challenge that we could possibly solve? If they do, then it's a qualified opportunity, whether they have budget, whether it's not quite the right time. All of those things can be overcome in a cold call if we understand the exact reason why they're telling us these objections, and seeing whether, is this something that you'd be open to learning about right now? Or is this something that maybe we share a few ideas about? And if it is the right time, we can continue the conversation. And if it's not, we part as friends, knowing that you've learned something new, and where to come is if the time's right.
Yeah, I love that. Every time that kind of ties up, you part as friends and having learned something new. So again, reading into that is part of the objective, that even if we don't get the meeting, if I can have just left them in a slightly better place, then again, happy days, I've done a good thing. On to the next. And if I just end up doing that a bunch of times a day, I prefer to have the meetings, yeah. But if not, who knows what's going to happen further down the line? And that, your reputation, personal brand, whatever is growing. Is that part of the thinking?
Exactly. And we see it all the time, like, go for the no. A no is better than maybe, or all these things. And I used to look at these LinkedIn posts and be like, oh yeah, but we do have sales targets. But the more experience I become in this role, the more I understand what it actually means. And that's, you can have multiple conversations, and it's much better to have better quality yeses, yes, I will speak again, than a few, oh, let's just try and shoehorn this in because we need to hit our target. And over time, when you're building that reputation, like you said, that personal brand, people will then start coming to you as well. They'll become aware of your name as well, and it becomes so much easier to have that conversation.
Yeah. So, I mean, you're selling salespeople. So now where I'm going with this then is understanding people's problems.
Mm-hmm.
You're selling salespeople. So again, you're going to be slightly closer to that. You are one, so you know quite a lot as well. But in understanding those problems, how did you go about doing that? Was it some kind of process, some kind of specialized thinking that you did? How did you sort of get to the essence of what's really like bugging people?
So this is such an exciting question for me, because I was the first SDR at my sales coach. I've pretty much been here since day dot. So there was no playbook. There was no go and do this, and this is the results that you'll get. It started before I had even joined the company. So our founders shared this idea about my sales coach to me. I was like, that is so exciting. I can see how this would help salespeople so much. So I really thought about it. Like you said, I'm a salesperson from my perspective. And I found it quite easy to think of these problems that we would share, because I worked in the conversation intelligence space, whereby we would help sales leaders to gain visibility into their team sales conversations, which was a really great product. What was missing, though, was the time of managers to review those calls. Yes, we had great technology that helped them to gain that visibility at scale, but still they didn't have time to do that. So that I knew that was going to be a big one. And then I worked with sales coaches. So I was like, you have been a sales leader before. How would this have helped you? And they shared some really insightful tips. So they said, we had a sales development budget set aside for our team. Like, we wanted to invest in them, but we just didn't know where to go. So and it's a bit of a minefield. There's so many sales coaches out there, and you could be tied to one and it might not work out. So I was like, okay, I can see that being a problem that we could solve as well. And then it really was a bit of trial and error. So I started having these conversations and then listened to discovery calls that my colleague Mark was having. And on those discovery calls, he was going into more details, and they were saying, actually, we do have the time, we have those one-to-ones. But when we dove a little bit deeper, we knew that they were more about metrics and KPIs rather than true development. So it was really a process of starting off where I thought we could help, speaking with our sales coaches, and then trial and error. So on day dot, me and Mark were making cold calls, seeing what resonated. And from there, we developed a bit more of a framework.
Oh, I love that. I mean, again, sort of paraphrasing, you've just immersed yourself in the world of the prospect. Yeah, easier perhaps
Pretty
because,
much, yeah.
well, because it's sales and that's kind of what you do, so it's selling to yourself to a degree. But I think it steps back, actually. It's the mindset to want to do that rather than I got all our catalogs, I got all our brochures, I learned about our product, I got such an expert in all our features and all of this stuff. I mean, you're laughing, but that's what a lot of people do. Yeah. It's the other way around. I've got to get into their world, understand what they're all about, to be able to talk to them about them, and then do this in this very transparent way that shows we have a way to help you deal with that. That's what the journey looks like. If it's right for you, happy days, let's move on. If it's not yet, okay, cool, we're good. It starts at mindset, I think.
100%. And when you're speaking with other SDRs who are developing this framework, you don't need to start at day dot to develop this. You can work out how your product or service helps by speaking with clients, by speaking with prospects, people who rave about you. What is it about this that has helped you so much? Where were you at the beginning and where are you now? And from that, you can start to see trends and put that into your messaging. And that's how it will start resonating at scale when you sort of analysing different areas.
Look for your raving fans. Yeah.
Yeah.
And when you said, let me just clarify this, I think it's a really important phrase here. Where were you at the beginning and where are you now? This is in relation to using our stuff. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. Okay. And then another. Oh, you're full of sound bites today. This is awesome. It's going to be so easy to cut this up. Resonate at scale. Oh, awesome. Tell me a bit more about that. What do you mean by that? It's a cracking phrase.
So we know that somebody's world is going to be different from another person's world, if it's different companies, if it's different roles. So it's really about understanding trends within roles. What is it that a sales leader cares about compared to a CEO? What does a sales enablement leader care about compared to a VP of sales? Because there's going to be subtle differences, and it's unlikely that you're going to change your outreach message drastically to each person. You're going to end up spending too much time researching and you'll have minimal outreach and minimal results. So it's about having 2 or 3 pain points that resonate with each individual ICP and using those at scale. So for example, I might use 2 or 3 pain points and call prospect A, and they might say, actually, point 2 and 3 we've got covered, but point 1 it's keeping me awake at night, so let's speak. Whereas prospect B might think, actually, point 3 keeps me awake at night, but point 1 and 2 are totally fine. So having it, because you have 30 seconds ultimately when you're on a cold call to grab somebody's attention, and having 2 or 3 points means that, okay, they're not going to resonate with everything, but there's probably going to be one thing in there that they do resonate with. And that's something that can be dug into deeper on a discovery call. And there might be all other sorts of things that crop up there, but it's about piquing that interest. So that's how I resonate at scale, by covering a broad surface, but making sure that they're specific to each ICP.
Yeah. Okay, because you spent so much time understanding each of them. Yeah.
Exactly.
I got that. Okay, so transparency, open, honest, all that good stuff. You mentioned also using other channels. So I think you talked about
Mhm.
LinkedIn,
Mhm.
particularly social media. Oh, come on. It's got to be a little bit tempting to sort of push the barriers of truth when you're doing stuff on social media, no?
Push the barriers of truth.
Just a little, tiny little bit, just to embellish, perhaps.
So would you mean that in terms of like writing content or reaching out specifically to people?
Well, there's two different parts to that, isn't there? So let's start on writing content, and then we'll talk about the outreach that you might be doing through messages or videos or something.
Okay, so writing content is actually an easy answer. I'm going to say no, I don't ever push the barriers of truth, just to put it out there. But writing content actually makes it super easy for me to be super transparent because I rarely write about my sales coach on LinkedIn. I rarely write about products or services. LinkedIn for me is about sharing ideas, and my network is SDRs, it's salespeople and sales leaders. And whilst, yes, I do generate leads from that content because it helps people, there's a few reasons why I do it. Number one is because I can share my journey. It's like exciting to look back on where I've been to where I am now, but mainly because I share my learnings. I might see something that's really helped me in my practice. I'm going to share it with LinkedIn. So I don't think there's any pushing the boundaries of truth there because I talk about real life stories. I'll share my real life cold calls. And I'm like, this is what it is. This is what happens. This is my day-to-day life. If that helps you, then that's great. And what happens is people do message and say, oh, just saw your post on this and I've booked a meeting today. And I'm like, well, that makes it worth it. That's so exciting. And it can start conversations as well. And I suppose that leads us into direct messaging as well, because there's a couple of ways how I book meetings through LinkedIn. It could be off the back of my content, whereby somebody says, I saw your post on this and I've been searching for a sales coach. And I'm like, well, are you open to learning a little bit more? And that's how these organic conversations come. Or it could be reaching out. And I actually treat them just the same as cold calls. I use LinkedIn voice notes and LinkedIn videos because I find when I put my voice to words and speak them rather than type them, you can hear what I'm trying to say. You can hear that it's a bit more conversational. It's not pushy. It's like, oh, I saw that you posted this, wondered whether this resonates in your world. And it creates that conversation. So that's how I put all of the ethics that I put into one side of my prospecting online as well.
Yeah, again, if I paraphrase, it's the real you, and that's what we're saying. That's the ethical part of it. Is like kind of that's me. That's genuine. It's kind of what I'm saying, and you can hear me say it, see me say it on the video.
Mm-hmm.
So also, this is kind of this podcast. It's like it's both ethical selling, but it's a bit of a mini SDR masterclass. I feel
I
I'm repurpose it, market it in two ways. No, but this is brilliant. So okay. What haven't I asked you? And that's a discovery question. What haven't I asked you that I should? Now, tell me. So as we start to as we just start to wrap up, time has just absolutely flown. A little bit more about my sales coach and sort of sales coaching in general. I think it is worth just touching on that if people are listening to, because you mentioned it a bunch of times. And again, if we can now make podcast work three ways, so that we're promoting another really good resource for people, then yeah, happy days. I've achieved a lot. Tell me about that.
Yeah, definitely. So my sales coach is coaching as a service. Like I said, we aim to help salespeople gain access to expert sales coaching that they may not be accessing in their current roles. But we also help those sales leaders to, one, become better coaches themselves, and two, not compromise on their time because we know how busy they are. So that we help them to deliver great coaching to their team. So we have a bank of over 30 expert sales coaches who've been cherry picked based on their own experiences and expertise. And we split our coaching up into a few different segments. We have mindset. So we know how topical that is in today's society. We've got really successful salespeople who are crippled by imposter syndrome, who really doubt themselves, who feel like they can't share their ideas in meetings, and they might be scared to take the next step in their careers because of those sort of mindset issues. So we have coaches who really work on that. We have coaches who work on tactics. So how are you going to get better at selling? What is it that's holding you back? How are you going to book more meetings? How are you going to improve these discovery calls so that you uncover more pain and ultimately make better connections with your prospects so that they're more likely to buy from you? Then we have growth mindset coaching as well. So I have never had more conversations with SDRs than now. And I can't tell you how many of them are desperate to be account executives and to make that step. But it is so competitive. You have to be at the top of your game as an SDR and show that you can fill pipeline to make that step. So how are you going to get there? Same from an AE to a sales leader. The only person really that you have is that sales leader, and they might be like, I've told you everything that I know. So it's an external perspective as well. So we split it into those three areas and match each salesperson with their expert sales coach based on that. So that is the model. And we work on a one-to-one basis with their expert coach and each rep. And also we have group coaching sessions whereby we have preset topics that are top of mind, and we have like-minded individuals who share best practice on a topic facilitated by a coach.
Awesome. And yeah, I mean, I know Mark. He's been a guest on the podcast, and his take it's very similar to yours. Unsurprisingly, problem prospecting. Yeah, obviously. People are listening in and don't know Mark. That's the title of his book. But also that's why I wanted to talk to you. I don't want to give him too much more airtime. He's had enough. Don't tell him. But no, about ethics, because again, that whole approach your business is taking, it is based in solid ethical approach to helping people get better at what they do, which for me is one of the elements of being ethical and selling. It's your learning and growth. So awesome to talk to you. You shared a ton of good stuff, so thank you very much for that. Where can people get in touch with you? I'm sure they'll want to have a bit more of a chat.
Sure. Well, I appreciate it. It's been an absolute honor. So yeah, couple of ways you can reach out. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's Nia Woodhouse on LinkedIn. You can drop me an email, nia@mysalescoach.com, or you can actually find me, for the Gen Zs listening, on TikTok, which is @NiaInSales.
TikTok. I think you're the first guest for I'm going to say long time, maybe ever, that's dropped their TikTok handle as a thing. Yeah, we'll drop all of those into the show notes so that people can click straight through and talk to you. But thanks again so much. Really appreciate you taking some time to come and have a chat.
Thanks, Fred.
Thank you for listening to the Sales Today podcast with me, your host, Fred Copestake. I hope you've enjoyed what you heard today. If you did, please get in touch and hit subscribe. And remember, you can take the Collaborative Selling Scorecard for free to check out how your sales approach works in today's environment. You'll find it in the show notes.